Hello and welcome back to another episode of Heat Chat. I am John Devine. With me is Anthony Chang. We haven't talked since the All-Star break. Well, we haven't talked since the trade deadline. Yep. The All-Star break is about to return, where they lie and tell you the second half of the season is there, even though it's like the last third, which I always found funny. But we're going to talk. We'll talk about the fact that Giannis is not here, as you guys all know, and the fact
he's
that
not. He's not here. Oh, okay.
And that people are really ticked because they did what? We're the only Eastern Conference team that did nothing at the trade deadline.
Correct.
We will talk about what they're doing with their roster spots, the idea moving forward, and what the deal is with Tyler Herro. So let's start with the trade deadline. Giannis stayed put. Injured Giannis stayed put. There's a lot of backlash because Ja Morant stayed put as well, which means the Heat did absolutely nothing except who did they sign today for the rest of the season?
They converted Myron Gardner to a standard contract and then signed Trevor Keels, who was in the G League, to that open two-way spot that opened by moving Myron to a standard. So, yeah, right. I mean, Myron deserved it, but yeah, not the name that everyone was hoping for, the trade deadline.
Correct.
As far as the roster addition.
Correct. So that's not what everyone was looking for. There are so many people who say, well, then what's the deal now? Do we tank the season? What do we do? As you have written, as Barry Jackson has written, tanking is not in this organization's DNA. Nope. So what do you do? And first off, tell us why tanking isn't in the DNA and what the Heat should do from here on out.
They just don't believe in it. They don't believe that it works. They don't believe it's a effective formula. They'll point out that you look at most of the tanking teams in the last, 20, 30 years, that usually that hasn't panned out to a championship. They go back to their way of doing things. They've won 3 championships and been to whatever it is, 6 finals at this point, 7 finals. I don't even know. I mean, a ton of finals. I mean, they went to 2 finals in the last 6 years. They'll point to that as like their proof that what they do and how they operate and how they think works. They also think that tanking puts their fortune kind of in the hands of luck, because you have to then be in the lottery and you have to get a good pick in the lottery. And then once you get a top pick, then you have to hit on the pick. We saw with Michael Beasley, having the number 2 pick doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a superstar. So they say that, that's kind of, depending on luck. They don't like to depend on luck. They like to make their own luck. And their way of doing that is we're always going to try to win. We're going to develop guys. We're going to, wherever we pick, we're going to try to pick, make a good pick, where we're positioned. And we're going to try to be ready with assets for when that star becomes available, where we could pounce and be aggressive and try to trade for that star. That's the way of doing things. That's the way they've always done it. I know fans don't necessarily agree with it. I would point out that things have changed in the last few years since the new CBA, where tanking probably is one of the only ways to get a star these days, because free agency isn't as, is not as big anymore as it used to be. We can just save cap space and sign LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. That doesn't happen anymore. Guys don't hit free agency in today's NBA, but they stick to their guns and they're not changing. So for all the fans that insist the Heat tank, it's not going to happen. Now, if it happens organically and God forbid a star for the Heat gets hurt or something like that, like it happened when they got Michael Beasley, Dwayne Wade was hurt, and it kind of happened organically, organic tank, that's one thing. But they're not going to intentionally tank.
Well, I think you hit on something too, and that's as they go whale hunting, trading. Look, they had some cap space. They didn't have it. They didn't have the most cap space. They had some assets. They didn't have the most assets. They had some picks. They didn't have enough picks. So if you are in the middle of the road of all these things and you can't combine it, and the fact that free agency is more and more difficult, those chances are about as big as the lottery chances, aren't they?
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of I've talked to them about this, where I'm like, things have changed a little bit, but they will point out to the tanking teams that it hasn't worked out for them. Now I could say Oklahoma City, right? I don't know if you would say they tanked, but they went through a few rough years, really rough years, where they weren't good. They lost Kevin Durant, they obviously lost James Harden, Russell Westbrook, they lost Paul George, and they had to go through it. They were one of the worst teams in the league.
They lost Paul George, and what did they get back, though?
They got Shea, which was a home run. I mean, it was a steal. They got a bunch of picks and Shea, who's might be two-time MVP this year, right? So yeah, that obviously changed things for them, but you have to hit on something like that, and they'll say we don't need to hit on a trade like that, right? We could be competitive. They believe that being competitive and playing these young players in these the kind of moments of truth that they call it, and trying to make the playoffs and trying to push for the playoffs and getting them playoff experience is valuable for their development. Like they'll point to that as opposed to, hey, young guys, go out there. We're trying to lose. We're going to pull you in the fourth quarter like the Utah Jazz, and because we don't want to win, but go out there and get some reps. Like they don't believe in that. They think young guys develop more when they're put in these positions where you're trying to win. You're in these high leverage situations. You're in the playoffs. You're in the play-in tournament. Win or go home, right? In the play-in tournament. People laugh at that, but they think experiences like that for guys like Kasparis and Kel'el Ware and Nikola Jovic and Hawkes, like that's all good for them. So they're really, really feel strongly about this. Eric Spoelstra has vocalized it, that's just something they're not going to do, and they're not going to gift young guys minutes. They're going to make them earn it because that's what they believe in, and that's what they've always believed in since Pat Riley got here.
So Pat Riley, he is 80 years old now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I mean he might be 81, but he's definitely at least 80. Yeah.
So 80. The narrative is always Pat's looking for that one big last run before he either goes back to Malibu and hangs out, or he just retires from the grind, the day-to-day grind. What kind of timeline do you see for him finding that whale? Before Captain Ahab decides to just sit there on his boat and look out over the sea, because this could be 2 or 3 years. This could be 5 years. This could be not at all in his timeline.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're going to try for Giannis again in the offseason. I mean, for people who are tired of Giannis, get ready again in the summer, because until he signs that extension, he is going to be a name that's going to be rumored as to where you go to LA, where you go to New York, where you go to Miami, and Miami is going to go after him again.
Is there anyone else worth looking at too? For those people who are tired of hearing the Giannis talk? Like Spider, I guess?
Donovan Mitchell. I was going to say Donovan Mitchell. Like, it's hard to know. I mean, sometimes this just comes up unexpectedly, right? Where, like, Anthony Edwards all of a sudden says, I don't want to be in Minnesota anymore. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but
right.
Stuff happens like that in the NBA. We've seen it. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the question is, like, who else is there? If it's not Giannis, maybe Donovan Mitchell. Anthony Edwards is like the dream, right? Luka was the dream a few years ago, and that didn't work out. He got traded to LA, and he's going to stay there, it seems like. So there aren't many big ones out there, and if you're asking yourself, how are they going to get that guy that they need, you're either going to have to trade for him most likely, or they're going to have to draft him. And if you don't have a top 10 pick because you're always constantly trying to push for the playoffs and the play-in, it's tough. Yeah, maybe you can get lucky and get a Jokic in the second round, right? Like the Denver Nuggets did. But that is very hard to do. Is it possible? Yes, but the odds of that are very slim. Which is to your point, JD, is like, yeah, he could say that playing for the lottery is luck, and that's true, but all of it takes a little bit of luck, right? Even if you're going through it with the Heat's approach, like some of it takes luck. You have to hit on a pick. You have to stay healthy during the season, right? If you want to make the playoffs and make a run. The sports takes luck. Some of it is obviously talent, a lot of it's talent and skill, but some of it is luck. And yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't, Giannis is going to be the name we hear about for the next few months until he signs the extension, if he signs the extension. But after that, I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what the next name is going to be.
So I'm thinking back to when Pat Riley first started this down here, and he picked up Alonzo Mourning, and he picked up Tim Hardaway.
I see the shadows in my face trying to close it. Yeah.
I just thought, in the background, I was just freaking out anyway. But I remember him picking up Tim Hardaway and picking up Zoe. Zoe obviously was near his prime in the peak. But Tim Hardaway had some questions. He had bad knees at the time. They were worried about his attitude. We say that, and if you want to throw John Moran in there, are there any distressed assets? I would say he got Tim Hardaway for pennies on the dollar at the time. Turned it around. It was pre-Heat culture with a capital C. But is there anyone out there you see like that they think they can turn around?
I mean, John Morant, right, is the name. Mm-hmm. They had a chance, and they really weren't interested. They were not interested in getting into that, even with his the price not that high. As someone would think for John Moran a few years ago when he was going to be like the next great young player in the NBA. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. His play has kind of regressed, and he's had the issues off the court. But from what I've been told, the Heat were not interested in John Morant. And that's a name that you would say would fit that category, right? Of kind of a distressed asset, has some upside, is still young. But they were not, there wasn't, those conversations didn't go far. So I don't know, because that would be the guy I would point to that fits that label, and they didn't bite. So yeah, I think some of the reasons for that was obviously the off-court issues, the regression to play, the fact that he wants a big extension, right? Which the Heat already have enough of those guys, right? We have Norman Powell on the roster, you have Tyler Herro on the roster, you have Hawkins who's going to be due for an extension soon. You just dealt with that with Jimmy Butler. Do you really want to bring another star out there that wants a big extension? And they will point out that they don't really like these slight small guards. If you look at the point guards they've had in the past, Tim Hardaway, Kyle Lowry, even Davion Mitchell, kind of sturdier guys that kind of fit their like switching, the way they like to switch on defense a little better than a John Morant. So it just didn't fit what they wanted. And but yeah, to your question, that would be the guy. And I'm sure he'll probably be available again this offseason. But based on how the Heat felt about him this month before the deadline, I don't know if that's going to be a match because the Heat weren't very interested.
Okay, so let's look at the guys who are still on this roster going into the remainder of this season. We're going to just hit and say congratulations, Kashad Johnson, for your slam dunk title. But I don't think we're going to go too deep into Kashad. Sorry. I'm looking at the team. We're dealing with who we have. We're waiting on your buddy Tyler Herro to come back, who's played 11 games so far this season. And how is he going to fit in? And I'm also looking at the backcourt. And if you look at Kasper Giacochonis, he's actually played well. How do you see this backcourt shaking out if and when everybody gets healthy? And, that may be a pipe dream anyway.
Right. It never happens, right? We always talk about this scenario of like, if everyone's healthy, what does the rotation look like? Who's in the starting lineup? But it actually never happens, right? But if it gets, let's speak in hypothetical here. If everyone is healthy, there are questions. I think Tyler would just be in the starting lineup just because I think you play your best guys as starters, and that's what Spo's done lately. But Pelle Larsson's played well, right? He's been a good complementary piece in that starting lineup. They've won with him as a starter. But if Tyler comes back, he'd be taking Pelle's spot, right? You would think it's Davion, Norm, Tyler, Wiggins, and Bam. And that's even assuming Kel'el Ware started the last few games before the break because of injuries next to Bam. And if Tyler comes back and Pelle's back and even Kel'el's available and Norm is back, I think Pelle and Kel'el are playing off the bench, and you're starting the five, that preferred starting five from the beginning of the season of Davion, Norm, Tyler, Wiggins, and Bam, and see how that goes, because they haven't been able to really play that group for a sustained stretch because of the injuries. You have to see what you have there.
From a statistical standpoint, from what I understand from reading the Miami Herald, the double big lineup actually had some positive points going into the All-Star break. Finally, that didn't happen all of last year and most of this year. Do you think they've unlocked something, or is it just the regression has gone back to the mean?
I mean, probably a little bit of both, right? I mean, I just think before this stretch, it was one of the worst two-man lineups on the team. I think the second worst, Bam and Kel'el. And they went away from it completely. Those guys didn't play together for like 16 straight games before this recent stretch where they were kind of forced to play together because of injuries. But I think we have to point out the opponents were the Wizards, the Jazz, and the Pelicans. Those are the three games that those three played in. The numbers were really good, like plus 60-something, I think, whatever, based off my memory. I actually think they're positive now, just based off of those three games. When they were such a big negative, I actually think they're positive now because they were so good, or it was so positive during that stretch. But the opponents were lottery-level opponents, right? Like some of the worst teams in the league. Some of them were actually trying to lose those games. So it's hard to say. It's obviously it's a positive step for that group, for that duo. But I want to see more. I want to see them do it against better competition. But do I think they should play together more? Yeah, I think they should play together. I think you got to see, those two guys are, for now, Bam is your franchise cornerstone. Kel'el is probably your best young player. You can't just have Kel'el play 15 minutes a game only when Bam's on the bench. That's not maximizing your talent, right? You got to find a way to play those guys together. Doesn't mean they have to start together, but their minutes do have to overlap 5 to 8 minutes probably for Kel'el to get back to 20 to 25 minutes a game, which is what he should be playing, not 12, because, when Bam's on the bench.
So we're looking at the rest of the season. You talk about the play-in, how to avoid the play-in. Looking at the schedule, the Heat has the 7th easiest remaining schedule
Correct.
of anybody, which means they've got a lot of cupcakes. Now, we say that, and then they lost to the Jazz. So that doesn't guarantee anything. But you're looking at that, and you're looking at the fact that they may be getting healthy. Does it look like we're going to repeat the same play-in scenario? And I'm also looking at the teams below them who are all just hurting. It feels like they're tanking to the point where
some are tanking, right?
Where people are saying the NBA shouldn't even have a lottery to avoid tanking, which is that's a podcast for
another podcast for the offseason, JD. Yeah.
We can fill that whole time.
Yeah.
But we're saying that, and it looks like, can they get out of this purgatory? Or does it look like we're solidly in to 7 versus 8, which means Orlando, or I can't even say Chicago anymore because they let go of everybody at the break.
Yeah, we have a new face in the play-in this year with Charlotte. Charlotte's playing really well. They're up to 9 now. They're only 2.5 games behind the Heat. So Charlotte's in there in the mix right now. But yeah, I think it seems like play-in is inevitable, right? Can the Heat get out of the play-in? Yeah, I mean they're 2 games behind 6, which they need to be. They're 2 games behind Philly. I guess they could catch them, but they're gonna have to win consecutive games to do that, right? They've only won consecutive games once since the start of the year. That is start of 2020 calendar year 2026. They have just not been consistent. It's win, loss, win, loss, win, loss for the past month and a half. That's not going to get you out of the play-in. So they're going to have to play a lot better. They do, like you said, have a favorable schedule, 7th easiest schedule. They still have 3 games against the Wizards. So 1 game against the Pacers, 2 against Brooklyn. So yeah, they have a lot of winnable games, but again, like you said, they just lost to the Jazz, who were actively trying to lose that game, or fined for trying to lose that game. So you can't take anything for granted. But the schedule will help. The fact that it seems like the Heat are getting healthier, with Tyler Herro, set to return soon. Finally get to see Bam, Tyler, and Norm play together, hopefully for an extended stretch. That should all be good. But is it enough to catch Philly, who has a 2-game lead on the Heat? We'll see. It's definitely possible, but they're gonna have to play a lot better than they have in the past. For the first 4 months of the season.
I'm going to ask you the question that will probably upset Heat fans anyway. Looking at both rosters right now through the end of the season, would you rather have the Heat's roster or Charlotte's roster?
Saying for right now or the future?
I'm saying we'll start now through the end of the season. That's one question. And then the next 3 years, if they stayed exactly as they are. Obviously, that never happens, but looking at the growth potential of both.
I think right now I'd rather have the Heat's roster, but I think growth potential I'd rather have Charlotte's roster. I think the young core, Brandon Miller, Khan, you have obviously still LaMelo, like they have talent on that team, and it looks like they're moving in the right direction. They still have some pretty good picks, right? They have the Heat's pick actually in the next few years. I think growth potential. With what they have on the roster right now, I'd rather have Charlotte's roster. But then you think about structure and you think about front office and executives. You throw that into the equation. I'd rather have the Heat just because they're a more stable franchise and they have a better track record. But just talent right now on the roster, as far as growth potential, I think I'd rather have Charlotte's, which I don't think I've ever said before in my life. Actually,
I don't think anyone's ever said that before.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the point. So we're looking at these players. For the rest of this stretch drive, who are the key players? Okay, we obviously know Kel'el Ware. Who are the key players in this? And I'm still fascinated by Casper, to be honest with you, because I want to know where he fits in. He gives them things that they don't have, including 3-point shooting, which, if you remember from the Summer League, this guy couldn't hit anything.
Yeah,
he couldn't hit twos.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's been one of the more surprising things. His 3-point shooting has really been a plus. I think that was one of the questions about him was, can he be a good enough 3-point shooter at the NBA level, right? And he's done that so far this season. Small sample, but obviously encouraging. As far as important players, the easy one is Tyler Herro. He's played 11 games this year. I feel like half of them have been on Toradol shots because he's been hurt while playing. So it's hard to get a real read on what this team can be. I'm not saying this can be a championship team, but we don't know yet. How do Powell and Tyler Herro look like together when they play an extended stretch together? How does that starting lineup look, right? With Davion, Wiggs, Bam, Norm, and Tyler. We still really don't know. He's kind of the mystery here of how is he going to fit? Will he lift them to another level? Can he lift them out of the play-in? This offense, after a strong start to the season, has been one of the worst in the league, right? After teams have kind of adjusted to them. Can Tyler help that? Can he kind of boost the offense a little bit? Those are all questions that remain unanswered. So I would say Tyler Herro. Then I guess after that, I mean, the young guys, right? You want Nico to play better. He has not had a good season. You know, this team is different when he's playing up to what the Heat believe he can be. Pella is important because he can fit in almost any lineup. They need him to stay healthy. They need him to continue to play well on both ends of the court. But I think the biggest one is Tyler, because that is kind of, we know what this team is already, right? Without Tyler, we've seen it. They're a 500 team. They're not bad. They're not very good. They're just kind of there. But could Tyler lift this team into, you know, a top 5 team in the East? We don't know. So that's kind of the big looming question here over the final few months of the season.
For me, the big question is, will Tyler and Norm be the backcourt version of Kel'el Ware and Bam?
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
Can it be the fact that can those two play together? We're still trying to figure out, obviously, Bam and Kel'el, and they're in different points of their career because, you know, Kel'el Ware is a second-year player. Norm is 32. Tyler's, 27? So they're established. Yeah, they're established guys who should be able to. But can their games translate? And that's why I think I keep harkening back to Casper, because I don't think anyone has the court vision, and you can't put this on a 19-year-old kid, but I don't think anyone else has the court vision to see plays developed on an offensive side like he does. And if you're going to have both of these guys who do some of the same things, not the same exact way, but if they're gonna score, and you need someone who knows where their spots are and getting them to their spots in rhythm, you need a guard who can facilitate that. And I love Davion Mitchell, and Off Night is a perfect nickname for him, and his defense cannot be underestimated. But to unlock that offense, you may need someone who is a little more creative on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wonder where Casper's minutes are going to come from, because you know, when Tyler does come back, when Norm is healthy, when Pella's healthy, how is he going to fit into the rotation? Right? There's just not enough minutes to go around. I think it's good what he's shown so far when he's been needed, but I just don't know if he'll get the consistent minutes when if this team is ever healthy, because they have so many guards, you know. And that was, I think, one of the frustrations of fans is, you want to play the young guys. They're trying to prioritize the young guys' minutes. It probably would have helped if you would have made some room for them, right, to play more. But this team, like we've talked about, they're never going to tank. They're always going to try to put themselves in the best position possible. They weren't offered a first-round pick for Wiggins, so they didn't think it was worth it to trade him for 2 second-round picks, which I could see that. I could understand that. But yeah, I think that's one of the frustrations is, you want to lean into Pella, you want to lean into Nikola Jovic. Why not make room for them by trying to unload some of these veterans, right? But that's just not the way they operate. And Drew Smith is going to continue to still get minutes too over Casper's probably. You know, I know that's
right.
So yeah.
And I didn't want to necessarily get rid of Wiggins for nothing. I really did. But I do think that the team plays, I guess, both ways, just as cohesive with Pelle Larsson. Look, Pelle Larson's not going to get Wiggins' numbers on a night-in, night-out basis. Not at this stage of his career, at the very least, or both stages. But what the team does with him on the floor warrants looking at it a little more closely. And if you look at the cost versus the return, you were getting a really good rate of return on it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think they have to look at that more closely. And from what I've been told, the reason they didn't add a veteran on the buyout market, right, is because they want to prioritize their young guys. They don't, and the reason they didn't just make a trade to make a trade is they didn't want to make a lateral move to get, like, let's say, DeMar DeRozan, right? And then you're taking away minutes from the young players. They want to play their young players. Now, they're going to have to earn their minutes, but why make a move that's going to try to make it tougher to play them? So if that's the case, I understand that. I think that's what the season should be about, is developing the young guys, playing them minutes, meaningful minutes. We've seen that lately with not only the first round picks, but like you said, Pelle Larson, Myron Gardner, who was a two-way contract guy until today. He was converted to a standard contract. He's played a lot of important minutes lately and has been impressive. So if they continue to play the young guys, kind of lean into that while also still trying to win, I think that's the right approach moving forward here over the final few months.
But that's the hard part. It's organizationally they want to play the young guys. They want them to earn the minutes, but then they don't, because I understand you're teaching them how to play the right way, but if they don't necessarily, if there were 3 or 4 games worse in the standings, or 4 or 5 where you're definitely playing for it, then you just open the floodgates and let them play.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Let them eat. But you're in this. That's the problem with being in this limbo. It's so much more than, hey, we're going to make the play-in, or we're going to, it's a growth opportunity. It's like, okay, the hard part is, when do you play them? When do you say, okay, darn it, I'm going to play these guys. It's going to be all you can eat because you guys need to figure this out, or not, because you're against losing. You're straight against losing. You don't want the growing pains to include losses. That's a hard tightrope to walk.
It's tough. It's almost like they're trying to walk 2 different timelines, right? Which I think has been a struggle and kind of a frustration among fans. If you talk to them on Twitter and social media and you see their complaints, is like, what's our direction? We're trying to win, but we're trying to play the young guys. And can you do both? Yeah, I guess there's a way to do both, and they're trying, right? You've kind of seen it this season where they've been able to win games while playing their young guys, but it's a difficult juggling act. And that's the challenge right now.
Look up the road. Look at Hard Rock Stadium.
Yeah.
They have pulled the plug on a whole bunch of veterans. They have burned the house down to start over again. And you know what? People are not that ticked off about it.
Right. And I think Heat fans don't understand, but I think what the Heat would argue is NFL is different, right? You need one player isn't going to change it. They have so many holes they need to fill, right? The Dolphins, they have so many areas they need to fix. The Heat could have traded for Giannis 2 weeks ago and been one of the top teams. Like, all it takes is one guy, So they don't want to tear it down to the studs and then not be in position where if they get a top guy, they're not they're not going to be attractive to a guy like Giannis because they're going to be rebuilding, and B, even if you get them, like, it doesn't mean anything. So the NBA is different, where it takes 1 or 2 guys and all of a sudden you've seen this with Jimmy Butler. The Heat was a mediocre team before him. They missed the playoffs. They get him, and then they go on this run where they make 2 finals and all those Eastern Conference finals. In the Heat's favor, the Dolphins haven't won in 25 years. That's a little bit longer suffering than the Heat in the play-in for a couple of years in a row. But people have short memories, unfortunately. So where do we go to now? We start back. The season starts back for the Heat Friday. Friday in Atlanta against the Hawks. Yep. And then Saturday against Memphis here at home. Back to it, back to back, just to start the schedule again. No rest. So before we start wrapping up, Tyler Herro, we talked about it. Yeah. Coming off that injury, there's some debate, but it's a back issue. Rib issue. Rib issue. Sorry. Yeah. How quickly do you think he's going to get up to speed, and how much and how long before we get to see the full team of what we're going to have? Well, until somebody else gets hurt. Yeah, I mean, look, they have a back-to-back to start, right? So do I expect them to play both games in the back-to-back? I mean, I don't know. I mean, history shows that they've usually kind of managed that a little bit when a guy's returning from something. So we'll see. He's going to be back at practice on Thursday. Is it unfair to expect him on Friday against the Hawks? I'm not going to rule it out, but if I had to just guess, this is my hunch, I would think they would just wait until their team returns home, maybe Saturday, when they play against Memphis, or maybe even a game after that, give them a little more time, and they have 2 days off after this back-to-back where they can practice again Monday in Miami. So maybe they want to wait to get him another practice in Miami before he comes back possibly Tuesday in Milwaukee. That'd be funny, right? In Milwaukee, his hometown, where he was almost traded to for Giannis. That'd be a story. So, yeah, I think it'll be in the next coming days. I think within the next week he'll be back. But it remains to be seen kind of which game he makes his return in. So the results have been near 500, but the storylines have not been boring at all.
So as we go through, we're getting in the home stretch of this season. As we do, I think this is something we need to do weekly going through as schedule permits. Stay locked in with us because there's a whole lot to talk about. Just because the trade deadline is here doesn't mean that we're just coasting through until the inevitable play-in tournament. I think we're still coasting to the play-in tournament, but I think there's going to be a whole lot of stuff to talk about between now and then and how this is going to line up for the offseason. Because they're playing for jobs. Well, even if they're not playing for jobs, they're playing for minutes, and they're playing for their future. So
and
stay locked in with us.
Yeah, and contracts, yeah.
And money, because Tyler Herro, there's still a matter of what he's going to get for a contract. There's still a matter of Wiggins. What are they going to do with him? There's still Jaime Jaquez Jr., who we haven't even mentioned, who's had a really, really good season. Let's not underestimate how good a season he's had. But when you have overlapping pieces or overlapping players with similar skill sets, how are they going to clear all this out to give everybody a chance to succeed? In order to do that, you need to stay locked in with us. You'll have Anthony, you'll have Barry Jackson, you'll have all sorts of people weighing in on the Heat, and we'd like to hear from you too. So just remember, Anthony does a mailbag going into the weekend as well. Ask your questions there. You can always put your comments here at the bottom of Heat Check. But until next time, I am John Devine. This is Anthony Chang, and stay here with us. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.